So I'm Councillor Bev Craig. I'm the leader of Manchester City Council. So it's my job as the politician in charge of a city of 600,000 people to run the city safely, but also to make it a better place. Yeah, it's a great job. Probably not one as a kid that I realised that I'd be doing as I grew up, but certainly a very exciting time to be running one of the UK's best cities. So I've got in front of me some cards. It's a bit of a luck of the draw in terms of what I pull out here. So let's see what the first question is throwing at me. If you had an inspirational quote on your wall, what would it say? Well, this is quite funny, really, because I suppose I've never really bought into those kind of Etsy style pictures that you would buy and stick up. But if I do look around my office, to me, there's a little post-it note that somebody gave me that said that you're only impatient because you've got a lot to change. All right, let's keep going. Oh, three leaders, dead or alive, that you'd have a dinner party with. So I'd say for me, I'd have Nye Bevan, Nelson Mandela, and Barack Obama. And I think there'd be a nice generational fun mix, and hopefully we could get the wine flowing. What single thing would make your job better? Look, I'm a local government leader. What else am I meant to say here? I think money is certainly one of the things that, my job would just be different. And I often think about Manchester, the stuff we do in the city. Had we not have had budget cuts since 2010, we'd have an extra 430 million quid in the coffers. If one had the average cut that local government councils have received across the country, would be 70 million quid better off. That's roughly what I spend on all of my neighbourhood services. So certainly money, I think, for me. What makes you a community powered leader? Are you one? Well, I have to answer this question because obviously I was one of the leaders that co-authored our recent community power series. And I think for me, one of the most powerful things that people in power can do is give it away. And when I say that, I don't say it in a kind of vacant or a facetious way. But, I've always been a proponent of devolution, but devolution where you devolve power and control to the lowest possible level, the level that's closest to communities. And I'm a big advocate. The world's changed, people have changed, how citizens expect to be involved has changed. So government's got to change with them to be able to reflect that. How is the leader of the future different from the leader of today? So this is something that really interests me because obviously if you think about where leadership was 20 years ago, you can see the evolution of style. And I think we haven't quite made that transition yet to leadership style that's more open, more collaborative, but can see these things as a strength. So often, kind of openness and working with people, particularly in politics, is still seen as a weakness. And for me, kind of coming into the role that I've got, it doesn't take doesn't take a genius to say that most leaders of cities across the globe don't look or sound like me. And actually, it's recognizing that when you choose a style, it's because you're choosing, not because you can't do the other styles. What's the secret ingredient for good leadership that most people don't know about? The point about humbleness, that I think if you want to think about what a good leader is, somebody that's attuned to how they get the best out of people around them, that recognizes the things that they're really good about and has their own self-confidence to be able to do those things. And actually, I recently had the privilege of being at Sir Bobby Charlton's funeral. And one of the things that we talked about in the style of leadership that Sir Bobby gave, not just in football but in society, was that humility and humbleness. The ability when you do something really well, you don't have to go and immediately tell everybody. And I think actually that's the bit we don't talk about. That to get the best out of people, you've got to be prepared to let them take the spotlight sometimes, but know when you need to be involved. How did your upbringing shape who you are today? I think for me, and I suppose this is easy for a politician, isn't it? Is that we often get involved in politics because of the things that we want to see. And I think for me, growing up where I did and how I did, as a kid in a council estate 8 miles outside of Belfast, you get to experience, I suppose, firsthand when you reflect on it, how services consistently have not always worked for people. And that's because they've been designed by people with no experience of services. So I've always been really proud of not just being the first kid to go to uni in my family, but the first kid to do GCSEs. But for me, I think probably two things I'd say. The first is reaching the point where I harnessed and accepted some of the tricky stuff in my past and my background as the strength that I could show in leadership because that brought with me some unique understanding. And then the second, I suppose, it's just a way of making your brain tick when you think about reforming public services. That when we talk about stuff like person centered, you're actually able to think what it means for real people in real settings. And then I suppose that the final question for me, let's have a little look. Any secret tips to getting stuff done? So I think to me, there's something in this around not living the worst bits of old cultures actually. We all look at the videos on Instagram or see them in LinkedIn about the inspirational leader that wakes up at 4 a.m., that's done a half marathon before breakfast and completed their emails. But actually, to keep yourself at the best, it's about balance. It's about the stuff that makes you happy outside of work. And it's also how you show leadership to the people around you. I'm not saying that I don't have to do 12 to 16-hour days most days, but the world doesn't need to see me slogging my guts out as a driver and motivator for other people to do the same. So I think balance, energy, and passion. So thanks very much for listening, and thanks to New Local for putting me on the spot with all of these questions today.